Pretty Trade's here, and I'm going to show you how to undercoat your car. So in this video I'm going to show you how to undercoat your car, and I'm not really going to teach you how to do it so much as where to spray your undercoating at so that you can get all the spots so that you're not missing any that will rust out, because there's a few specific spots on a car that are kind of tricky to get to and that are really important to cover with a rust protectant to make sure that your car doesn't rust out. There's a lot of different undercoating products you can use. I really like fluid film. I've used it over 5 years, and I have a video where I show you what my car looks like when using it for 5 years that you can check out. And it's really great stuff. It creeps really good, which means that if you miss a spot a little bit, even if you sprayed near it, the fluid film will creep up and cover those spots that you kind of missed. So that's what's really nice about it. So the most important thing you're going to need to do before you can start spraying is you need to get your car up in the air if it's low on the ground. If you have a big SUV like a Jeep or something like that, you probably won't have to lift it. It'll be easier if you do, but you could probably go under there with a creeper and spray everywhere you need to get to with a pretty high car. My car's pretty low to the ground, so I have to lift it up. Make sure you use jack stands, most important, safety first. This is actually one of the most important spots to spray, and I would recommend the first time you spray in the wheel wells, I would take out these plastic fender liners and spray all behind there. Once you spray behind there and put the fender liners back, almost all that fluid film will stay there because the fender liners protect it from the road spray wiping it away. And so once you get underneath them, it's pretty much good for a long time. The only spot you need to redo is kind of right inside this lip here, because that spot again is exposed metal, and so you really want to get that spot really well because it gets hit with a lot of road spray. And so what I like to do is I like to do it without the little straw on it, and it's a little easier if the wheel's off, but you basically just go along this line here up like this, right along this edge where it's metal. You don't need to do back here because again this piece is plastic, only up along here to make sure you get that area really well. So one of the common areas people miss is your rocker panels, which is this part of the car. It's the metal that runs along underneath your doors. Some cars have a trim piece on top of it that's plastic. This won't actually rust out, again, because it's plastic, but the metal underneath will. And a lot of the times, salty slush and snow can get stuck underneath it. And once it's under there, if your car's not protected, these areas like to rust out really, really easily. So that's one area you really need to make sure you get well. There's oftentimes openings up towards the front or the back of them you can spray in. If you can get in along this seam here and spray there, the fluid film will actually creep down in there as well, which is a good one. And then the best way to do it is if you can access it from the inside. And a lot of cars have panels right here, and almost all of them you just pull straight up to remove them, like this. And then you can kind of spray down in through these little areas right here. And you have to you might need to search around, you might need to remove some other areas, but you can just spray all in these little holes here to make sure that you're getting the coverage where you need it. And then these just snap right back on. And like I said before, a lot of these have openings at the back. Mine's coming a little bit loose, so I can actually spray right down in here, which will help. And then in on the ends too. And if you have the car raised up, the tire will actually sag down and you can access in here a little bit better to reach down on the inside, because this is the metal part that you want to protect here. So when you're looking at the back of your car, underneath here, you want to get any of these exposed metal parts. These are super important to get. The only spot you don't want to spray in the back and underneath is your exhaust, because it gets really hot. If you do accidentally spray a little overspray on it, it'll just burn off in the next couple days. And then anything that's required for stopping or for traction, pretty much anywhere else that's metal is okay to spray. So again, avoid the brakes, avoid the tires, avoid the exhaust. But anywhere else, just coat it all down. Another really important spot to get is the shock tower mounts where they attach, and it's way up here above where the spring and the shock are. Up at the top is a really common spot where they rust out, so make sure you get all the way up in there really well. If the tires are off the car, it's a lot easier to get up in there too, but sometimes the plastic fender liner can block it as well. So just again, make sure you get way up in there. Also, while you're underneath, make sure you spray it at any holes in the frame, or you want to make sure you get a nice coating inside the frame rails. Make sure you get in the doors really well. You can spray as you're going in and out. Just make sure you don't put too much so that you block the drain holes, because that's how water gets out of the doors. Under the hood, a few spots you want to spray is your frame rails that go along the sides of the motor. Those are spots where rust can happen, and on the shock towers up here. As you can see, I have some on there already. It doesn't hurt to give them another coat, and then you can get your frame rails down here. Under the hood, the main areas you want to avoid is you don't want to spray your motor because it gets hot, or your exhaust, and your radiator you don't really want to spray. You want the frame of the car where it's mainly metal, and those areas that can rust out pretty easily. Another good spot under the hood is to get in these holes up in here, because along here, if moisture gets in there, it kind of just sits in there because there's no drains for it. So if you give it a good coating up in there, it'll help to protect it up in the inside of your hood. This isn't too big of a deal because worst case, you could replace your whole hood. It's an easy part to replace, so that's not like a huge concern. But again, you can do that if you're worried about it. A few other quick tips about undercoating your car is, one, make sure that you don't use your finger on the top of the spray can the entire time. When you're putting that much pressure on the tip of your finger, you can actually damage the nerve endings in your finger, so be careful with that. If it starts to hurt, use a different finger, or use your thumb. They also make some little attachments where you can use like a grip squeezer on the can, which is really helpful. I did it one time. I did like 3 cans with my finger, and I lost the feeling in it for a couple weeks actually, so be really careful about that. And the other thing is, less isn't always more with fluid film. If you use too much, it's just going to drip the excess off, or it'll creep more, which is good. So don't feel like you're using too much, because that's not really a thing. So if you found this video helpful, please subscribe because it's super helpful to me, and thanks for watching.